Let's talk about your juicy love with me, Una Drake. We explore relationships, dating, sacred union, communication, conscious love, healthy boundaries, and much more. As a dating and relationship coach for over 5 years, with a background in shamanic healing and metaphysical work, I've helped men and women, young and old, from all walks of life. My mission is to increase peace, joy, and love on planet Earth. So listen in and stay juicy.
Una, what a great show we're getting ready to have here today, yeah?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We're going to be talking about the ecology of connection. And I just think that's so foundational for any juicy life, let alone juicy love.
Well, I mean, I love that you're taking this on because for the first part, looking at the ecology of connection is one thing. Navigating it is another. So let's talk about, as you do this and you work with people and you are the person that has created, right? For those of you just tuning in, Una Drake is somebody that has crafted a way for us to look at all of the amazing relationships and connections we want in life and calls it your juicy love. And so when we think about this, we look at how to find a dynamic and life affirming love that we've always wanted. But somehow along the way to that place, we also have to look at the relationships. We have to look at how we are in the world, how we show up. And so what Una's been doing for decades is taking all of her skills, all of her holistic healing, all of her learning, all of her life experiences and said, I can help you. I can help you have that juicy love. One of the things, though, that would get in the way of that, Una, is not knowing how to navigate through the ecology of connection, right?
Yeah, I think it's common, I think, for people to not really kind of understand maybe some of the things that they need to do, to create the rich connections in their life. I think there's a lot of focus in American culture and society and just our tradition, as a nation, we focus on independence and self-sufficiency and I can do it myself. And that's great. I mean, that's wonderful in many, many ways. But I think it's left a lot of people in American culture lonely and isolated, really, at the end of the day. Especially, rugged individualism can be fabulous if you are a pioneer, or maybe, in business for yourself or, really shooting to get ahead in your career. A lot of times you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and really rely on your own resources and your own grit. But for having that juicy life and those juicy connections and creating an ecology of connection around us and cultivating an ecology of connection in our own lives so that we can have that juice, that the love and the other layer of life, you can have all the success and money that you want, but in my mind, if you don't have the connections around you, the love around you and in your life and your relationships, then what's it all for? You'll just go to bed, lonely. That's no fun. So, I think a lot of people in our culture just haven't necessarily cultivated the skills that they need to create those connections around them. If they move out of their hometown and they don't, have automatically the friends that they went to school with or any other number of reasons.
I mean, don't you think, though, what we're talking about is fundamental? It's fundamental. If we want to have juicy love, we got to step into the world of some basics. And part of this, I know you've talked about this before, where you've talked about the relationships we have with ourselves, right?
Sure.
But as individuals and in our country, we are considered an individualistic culture in the United States. Now, clearly, with people coming in from other cultures, that's changing a little bit. but the outside world looks at us compared to, let's say, my relatives down in South America, who they are a collectivist, a community culture, right? How does that play out with us here as Americans? How does that focus on individualism and independence? How does that play out with us when we're looking for navigating these waters, sometimes really rough waters of relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think many people in our culture, and it's encouraged in our culture, to put an emphasis on getting ahead on your own. And so if you look at, I'm thinking of like, hierarchy of needs, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and some other models. But a lot of people focus on getting respect before they focus on getting love. And so there can be an emphasis on just focusing on your own needs, focusing on your own career, etc., which is, again, it's fine. But I think it's not as acceptable, or it's not as encouraged in our society as a whole to really prioritize relationships. And the truth is that sometimes that means putting other parts of your life, on the back burner, or it can mean making some hard choices. And if you've only received the message that that's not okay, or never prioritize friends or family above work, which some people do get that message for sure. Then that's hard. I mean, then you could have a great career but not maintain healthy relationships.
Oh boy, you nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it. See, sometimes we get confused, Una, don't we? When we take a look at somebody and they're uber successful, right? Like whatever they are in the outer world, they got the great job, they got the boss, they got the car, whatever that looks like, the shiny things, right? And that doesn't always mean that they are champions at relationship building. It doesn't on the outside. And so there's sometimes a misconception, but there's something you said I want to get back to, and I'd love for you to talk more about it.
Sure.
When we are not, let's say, great at filling the relationship gap. Relationships, by the way, we are meant as human beings to be in relationship with each other. And if we cannot be, it is painful. There is a hole inside of us. And we in our society right now, we're filling that with every kind of feel-good thing we can put in our body, whether it's that extra bag of popcorn that you're going to sit there and eat, or maybe it's the movies that you just can't turn off. Or if you're like me, maybe you want to go into watching Stranger Things now, the entire series 4 times in a row. But the point is, I'm well aware that that's what I'm doing. Tell us a little bit about that gap that we are trying to fill.
Yeah, I mean, human beings are social creatures. You nailed it. We are meant to be in connection, in community with other human beings. And if we're lacking that fundamental connection, then we're going to feel it. It's going to be a void in our life. And we're going to feel pain and loneliness, emptiness. And yes, many people do feel that with addictions, basically. I mean, some people say that fundamentally addiction is not about like a substance abuse, or it's less about what the person's addicted to and more about the lack of actual connection in their life. Because I think we get fed with love from other people, from the relationships that are in our life. And if we don't have that, if we don't have the connections and the love from other people, from genuine connections and in the people around us, it doesn't have to be like a romantic relationship. No. I mean, in fact, that's what we're talking about. It should be many, relationships of different types, but that feed us on an emotional level. And I think basically addictions is what people fill that with if they don't have that in their life. I mean, it can be food addiction, work addiction, or, stronger, alcohol or, opiates, all sorts of things that people use to try to make themselves feel good. And I think a large part of that, I'm not an addiction expert, but I think a lot of that is because people feel fundamentally lonely and not good enough. And, we're all human. We all need connection, and nobody's perfect. But I think that some people, they don't feel worthy to reach out and have good relationships with other people, or they just don't know how, or every time they have, they've, gotten smacked down, so to speak, or they've, met with what they perceive as rejection. And it could be really challenging. And some people, maybe they just don't know how to reach out and establish those connections that all of us need.
Yeah. I want to take a short break because when we come back, I really want to get back to what we're talking about here today, because one of the things that we forget, Una, is exactly what you're talking about. And that is that there are other relationships in life that feed us. Sometimes when we go down the pathway of being so isolated and so alone, and by the way, you nailed it. Most addictions or programs on addiction point to number one worst energy outside of resentment. The number one enemy is isolation. And so that's why so many treatment centers don't do things with individuals. They do things in groups. When we come back, we're going to talk about something that also is important. What about those fairy tale expectations? What about those things we expect people to do, to be, to act like? What about the expecting them to do it over and over and over and over again, and they don't, but we still expect them to do that? Stay tuned. We'll be back. Una Drake is in the house, navigating the ecology of connection. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Yeah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so great. I love doing this show because part of what we get to talk about is beyond juicy relationships. We get to talk about how to navigate through life with other human beings as well. Una, how can people find out more about you? How can they find out about your programs?
Yeah, they can come to my website, unadrake.com. That's UNADRAKE.com. And you can read about me and what I do, and email me through my site or set up a time to talk with me. I offer Juicy Love Discovery sessions, and I'd love to talk with you. You can find the link for that right on my homepage.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about this idea, right, of fairy tale expectations. And I think this is important, right?
Absolutely. Because, in the first segment, we were talking about how much focus on individuality and kind of independence there is, especially in American culture. And, again, while that has some positive things, it has some real downsides too, in that we have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in our culture, especially. And the one exception, kind of the one pass that people seem to have in our culture for actually prioritizing a relationship is the primary romantic relationship, like a marriage partner typically. And people seem to idolize the idea of getting married. And it's really, when it comes down to it, I feel it's mostly a fantasy. People have like these kind of fantasy ideas for what a marriage should be and what they're going to get out of it, essentially. Like our expectations for a marriage partner, by and large in our culture, is fantasy land, if you think about it. I mean, a marriage partner has to be like your best friend, has to be, someone to take care of you when you're sick, someone to be the perfect co-parent, someone to feel a passionate lover, like for the rest of your life, which in most cases is decades and decades and decades. Someone has to fill all of these roles that realistically, especially if you're talking about decades and decades of time, one person typically just can't fill all of those roles all the time. And I think it's just setting ourselves up for failure if we think that, I think that realistically nobody can be all of that for, another person all of the time. And, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be more realistic. I kind of come down to earth. Now, obviously, I'm a love coach.
Yeah.
I love, but I want people to succeed in their relationships, especially long term. And that's where I think we really need an ecology of connection around us and around our primary relationship. Having a romantic partner who fulfills a lot of your emotional needs in your life is fabulous, of course. But if you don't nurture other relationships outside of your primary relationship, in my opinion, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and ultimately, in many cases, the failure of that primary relationship. So I believe that both partners should have friendships that they nurture outside, of the primary relationship. Guys can have guy time, women can have girls' nights or whatever that is. And I think it's okay to have, friendships with people of the opposite sex. I mean, I think that we need other things that nurture us outside of just that one relationship. If too much pressure and emphasis is put on just one single relationship, then the instant that person falls down, or maybe they, become sick, or they, something comes up in their life, which it will happen. I mean, especially if you're talking about long periods of time, things come up for people. We can't always perfectly fulfill all of the roles in our life all the time. I mean, we're human beings.
Yeah.
So I think having those kind of unrealistic expectations, if there is so much emphasis on just that one relationship, and then one of the partners becomes, they get, again, something comes up and they can't perfectly fulfill that role, then you can't, instead of, relying on the strength of other connections and other relationships, it can destroy that singular relationship. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, and part of this is exactly what we've talked about on other shows, is that we need to look to build points of harmony in our lives. And, when we set out expectations that are, and I liked what you called it, fairy tale expectations. So we're not talking about what I like to call everyday expectations, right? There are some of those where you get into a relationship with somebody, whether it's a love relationship or a friendship, and there are things you expect from each other. Like, I have a best friend. She has been my best friend since 1973, right? And we expect certain things from each other, right? And when one of us doesn't show up in that way, we're honest with each other to say, "Are you okay? Is there a reason, ... Yeah. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We really are talking about fairy tale expectations that usually are not grounded in agreements. And even if they are in agreements, I wonder if they're mutual agreements. You know what I mean?
Or even if they are mutual agreements in some ways. I mean, can you actually agree to be, 100% in love with someone, romantically, passionately in love with someone for the rest of your life? I mean, I don't know if we can. I think a lot of people kind of have these expectations that their feelings are going to remain the same when what we can actually agree to are actions, and what we're actually going to do. So, and I mean, with feelings, I mean, you can agree to nurture a relationship, and you can agree to, oh, there you are. You can agree to, you can make certain specific agreements, and the more conscious both parties are about what agreements they're making and how they plan to keep those, that's best. But I think when I see a lot of, say, marriage vows, or people going into, especially, I guess I'm talking about marriage because there seems to be an emphasis, an idealization of marriage, and I just see it over and over and over again, like how much pressure people put on each other and on that singular relationship.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and, I think what I love about our society today, though, too, is that with the advent of social media, let me just call it that, because right now it is like way more than social media. I mean, the whole Instagram, the Pinterest, the live video, we are so far out of the social media realm the way it was intended. Here's what I want to say about this is there are so many places for us to connect. We might go in the opposite direction where we're connecting with everybody else and we don't know how to connect with that one. We're going to talk about that when we come back, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Because navigating, and this is what you said before, the show today is really about navigating, right? The ecology of connection. And it doesn't always mean not enough.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a difference there. There's about presence, like being truly present versus having your energy scattered.
Oh boy, that's it. Scattered energy. I think we know a little bit about that, right? Us busy women doing what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a constant practice.
It is. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something that I love talking about. And Una's going to take us on the pathway. What is the navigation? What are the coordinates, if I might say, as we're navigating through community and connection? How important is it today? Is it as important today as it was, maybe when you were growing up? Is it more important? Is it less important? And here's another one. Why is this important for us, especially if we're going to pass it down to children and grandchildren? Hopefully, community and connection is not a lost art. But I'm going to leave that up to Una Drake. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. Thank you so much for that. This is Your Juicy Love with Una Drake. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to hang out here with Una. Una, how can people find out more about you, the work that you do with people to discover Juicy Love, and some of the upcoming events you might have?
Sure. Just go to my website, unadrake.com. You can read about me, what I do. You can schedule a Juicy Love discovery session with me. You can read my blog posts. There's lots of information there. So just take a look, unadrake.com, unadrake.com. Check it out. And I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Una. Listen, we've been talking about navigating the ecology of connection today. We've talked about what individualism is versus isolation. We've talked a little bit about community and connection. You've also talked about what the waters of fairy tale expectations look like. And, now what we're looking at is this wider range of relationships that have to do with the communities we live in, how we connect in those, and how we don't. And I think you and I were saying during the break that part of this is that there are people that literally belong to online communities of people which they've never met. So now we have a couple different kinds of things to look at here.
Yeah. Like you said, definitely in our world today, our online connections are very important for many of us, which I think that's can be really positive in some ways, but I believe that online connections can help us feel like we're not alone. It can help us reach out. But I believe that there's a real difference between only interacting with people in an electronic format versus actually spending time with people in real life, like when you're actually in the room next to another person. And I think from a human standpoint, having real one-to-one in the same room, same space, and actual like touch connection, especially like just be able to give a friend a hug, or to touch the hand of someone that you're with, and to actually be able to really look into their eyes and hear them right across the table from you or on the couch or something, that's different. It provides a different level of connection than just being like plugged into social media or the internet. And I think it's a mistake to allow our energy to get so diffuse that we focus on our electronic connections or our internet social media connections to the detriment of our real life people that maybe we live with, like our primary partner, or our children, or real like friends and family that are in our actual life, in our real world, maybe in the same house. That's and I think it can be a challenge. I know for me sometimes, I'll have had a busy day and I come and sit down. This happened last night. I sat down on the couch next to my partner, and he was saying something, and I literally had to pause him and say, "I'm sorry, I need to pause and get present," And I literally had to, because my mind was diffused. It was on the email that I had, sent half an hour ago, or this communication, that communication, the text I'm getting on my phone. I need to set that down and get present and realize, like, land in my body, land where I'm at, so that I can really show up for, in this case, my partner, or when my kids are home from school, hey, it's not just like, oh, how was your day? What did you do at school? Just as a service thing. Like, I need to actually be there if I expect them to show up. If I expect my kids to like really open up and talk to me about what's actually going on, I need to be present.
Yeah.
If I'm not present, how can I expect them to be present?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're talking about something. I'm thinking about this really. And what you said is so important. Sometimes we get really bogged down with thinking it's like the super big stuff we have to do, right? And I was just taken back to my mom. And one of the things she would do, I can't remember which day of the week it was, that we'd come home from school and there would be hot cornbread and milk. And that was a ritual that we did. And I think it was like a Thursday. It wasn't like a Friday. It was like a Thursday or a Wednesday or something. And we'd all come home from school and we'd have this hot cornbread, which of course we took and put in the milk and then ate with a spoon, because that's the way she did it. And I remember the day that we came home, and a Thursday, and it wasn't there. And all of us, I mean, it was so unusual, right? But it's not a small thing, because it took my mom time to make it, but it was so appreciated. We appreciate it. Now, I have to tell you that it wasn't that she stopped doing it. It's that she had gone out and didn't get back in time. And when she got back, she made it. But we had been so aware of the love in that. Right?
Yeah. And when it didn't happen, you missed that connection, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having rituals and routines in our life can help us really connect with the people around us. I mean, I wasn't even planning to get into that, but that's a really good point, is that sometimes having something regular built into our routine can help give us kind of the punctuation marks that we need to get present with the people who are around us and prioritize it. I mean, honestly, some people connect with their community and relationships through, say, like going to church, or I do shamanic work. So I have a journey circle that I go to on a regular basis, like a shamanic journey circle. And that's a very important part of my life, because I can connect with the people there, and it helps me connect with spirit. And it's just like a a pause and a punctuation in my month that is really helps me connect to different relationships, and feeds me in a way that I don't get any other way. For example, so I think some people get this. My partner has a really good friend of his that he goes and they have kind of bro time, like guy time, and
Right.
video games every Monday,
Right.
because that works for them, and he gets fed in that relationship in a way that he doesn't get any other way, and he misses it when he can't. Now, if something happened, I mean, it's not like, if I was sick or something like that, I mean, he would, he shows up when he needs to show up, but we also allow each other to have, in our relationship, we allow each other to have other friendships to get fed in other ways, and I think that's really important.
Oh, it is. I, for example, I go play table tennis, and Wednesday evenings, one of the days I go play, and I go play on Saturday, and they're different groups of people, right? And it's very hard for people like you and people like me that are out in the public, and people know we're out in the public. So they know us by our public, like Dr. Pat, right? So somehow my table tennis buddies, men and women, by the way, more men, they found out that I do the show and the network, and so right now all of a sudden there's a different expectation upon how I behave when I play, Una. So right, I mean, so here I am, I'm playing a sport pretty assertively. So now I'm aware of this. Now, believe me, I don't act out. I'm not in my 20s anymore. If I miss a point, I don't act out. But it's fascinating to see how what people expect of us can carry over. And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. Sometimes that, the expectations for who we are in one situation become unrealistic for us in another. And I think that what we're talking about is, how do you stay true to yourself? How do you be who you are in all of those connections? Even though if you're going to go have some bro time, raw time, bro time, whatever that is, you may get a little crazy and a little wild. We're going to talk about that. When we come back, we're going to talk about, Una's going to take us on a journey. How do we create this ecology of connection? And yeah, every once in a while, I may say a cuss word when I'm playing that ping pong game, but I'll never throw my racket. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Yeah, everybody, look at your juicy love, Una Drake. Una, this is really so fun, navigating the ecology of connection. I mean, I'm reminded of the ways that I think I've had to be creative about connecting, because I work a lot. I'm very connected to my team. They're enormous, fabulous, talented people. I love them. And I would do everything with them, which would be a little bit out of balance. They would be like, okay, please, I've got a life, leave me alone. But I've had to create other ways to connect in life, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We were just kind of chit-chatting during the break. I wish we would have recorded that break, because we were kind of chit-chatting about how we had to be creative, right? To connect, right?
Definitely.
So let's talk about, how do we create the ecology of connection? And I love you're talking about this, because if there was a body of work that I would say to you, Una, please go in this direction and focus on it, it would be this. I think relationships die because we don't know how to connect, not just in the relationship, but outside of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen it happen in my own life, at times when I have, say, had an over reliance on, a primary relationship. For me, this happened the most when I had young kids and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I got pretty isolated, honestly. And I think it's important for, if you find yourself in that situation where maybe you are feeling isolated, or that you have an unhealthy reliance on your primary relationship. What I say is, try to focus on what brings you joy. Like I said in the introduction to the program, one of my primary purpose is to increase peace, joy, and love on planet Earth. And, so part of that is joy and focusing on what brings you joy. And I think when we can connect to what brings us joy, then we can connect to other people that also have joy around maybe it's a particular activity or topic. Maybe you like art or ping pong or also at one point I connected around people who are interested in spirituality.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
And so you can connect with groups of people who also find joy in what you find joy in, or maybe it's video games, and you want to just play video games with other people who enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I was telling you that I learned how to play dominoes.
Yeah.
I didn't have much of a childhood. So I didn't have a childhood where I read, what do you call those, story books? And I certainly didn't have a childhood of games. I grew up in the Bronx learning how to play poker at 8 years old with Joe Maggio in his garage, and roulette, and because his dad owned like an underground casino. So
Wow.
Games were not there. So I'm learning how to play these games. And one of them is this dominoes that I'm just fascinated by it. So we can step out of our box a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we need to do that. And you were talking about how to connect. Maybe you wish that you could reconnect with people in your life. All of us get busy from time to time, and maybe we inadvertently neglect some relationships that we would like to, rekindle, but maybe we're not sure how to reach out. For me, I like having people over. I like having dinner with people. So for me, sometimes when I've wanted to reconnect, I invite, an old friend over for dinner, because that's comfortable for me. But maybe it's through playing a game of dominoes. Maybe it's through meeting up for coffee. Maybe it's through inviting them to take a walk around Green Lake. Mm-hmm. Or maybe there's an event in your community that you think that they would enjoy too. Like, go to a craft fair or, or an art gallery. There's so many ways. We can almost think of it as sometimes as like a date, which instead of going on a date like with a romantic partner, you can go on a date with a girlfriend or a relative that you haven't been in touch with in a while.
What you just said is really important. That would be the call to action today, because unless we look at it as a date, as something that we look at our calendar and we say, you know what, Una, you're that important that this time here that we're going to pick out together, whatever it is, we're going to do fun, maybe drive over to Vashon, whatever it is. This is it. This is a priority. I love the idea of scheduling a date with your BFF, right?
Absolutely.
Or a bro date, right? Whatever you want to call it, or to get it on the calendar for real. Because if you don't, tomorrow comes, an hour comes, something else comes up in your life. The kids are sick. The computer is not working. The clients, are overbooked. And those relationships fall to the bottom.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, what we prioritize, you can see what someone prioritizes by what they actually put on their calendar, what they make time for, what they show up for. If you want to prioritize relationships in your life, then put them on your calendar, make it happen, And I guess I want to circle back. You were talking about electronic relationships and stuff like that. And I think it reminded me one thing, honestly, my sister, I have a sister who's really my best friend, but she has lived on the East Coast in New York for quite a few years. But one way that we prioritize our connection and our relationship with each other is through scheduled phone calls. And, we'll talk for like half an hour or more at a time. And also sometimes we do like Skype dates, where we can actually talk face to face.
I love that.
Just do it over like Skype or Zoom or some other technology. But we're it's not as good as being in the same room with her, but at least we're able to, we make time for that connection. It's literally a date. Sometimes we call it a Skype happy hour, and we'll both get a glass of wine or something, and we'll just connect, as if we were at a restaurant or something. Or she was.
I love that. I hadn't thought about Skype, but now we're really talking about your area of expertise, and that is helping people navigate so that we know how to be in this world, be of this world, and be together as human beings. And I think what you're talking about is really the next wave of relationship learning that you, of course, are an expert in. This is really important. It's not just for our livelihood and ourselves, but so that we can make sure we're staying whole and complete.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, because I think the more whole and complete and healed and healthy that we can be when we show up for a romantic relationship. And yes, I do mostly help people with romantic relationships, but I think in order to have a healthy romantic relationship, it needs to exist within this ecology of connection. And that's where, honestly, if someone, and I've worked with clients on this, if they come to me and they really don't have a strong friend network or, family members in the area that they spend time with, if they're truly, truly isolated, then honestly, I think it's the best thing that they can do is to develop a healthy friend network, social network, develop connections that don't have the added pressure and intensity of a romantic relationship. It's important to develop a rich ecology of connection before you go after a romantic relationship in a serious way. And even once you have found that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that you still independently and as a couple develop the ecology of connection that can support your relationship, that primary relationship, in tough times and in good times. You want to have a community around you that you can celebrate with, or who can bring you dinner if a tragedy strikes,
I know. And, we've all been through that. You are very sought out relationship expert. And this is so important because if we're going to have a juicy love, we have to have a juicy love with ourselves, as you have said many times, but also with the people that are close to us. I want to thank you so much. Please give out your website. And last question, what's your personal message? What do you want to leave us with today?
You are loved and you have brilliant, beautiful love to share with those around you. So don't be afraid to reach out to your friends, your family members, people in your community. Let them know that you care. Let them know that they are a priority in your life, and make a date with a friend. So increase that ecology of connection that's around you and your partner, and give your partner space to do the same thing. You'll both be happier for it. So thank you. And you can find out more about me on my website, unadrake.com, UNADRAKE. Read more about me, get a hold of me, email me, set up an appointment. I'd love to talk with you and have a juicy love and juicy life.
I love it. Una Drake, everybody. And I'm Dr. Pat. Remember that you can live an absolutely fulfilled and amazing life. Stay tuned. Another hour of Transformation Talk Radio coming up. Thank you for tuning us in and turning us on.
You've been listening to Your Juicy Love with me, Una Drake. Tune in each month as Dr. Pat and I co-host together, creating juicy conversations, and every second Monday at 12 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio. I interview amazing guests, and you'll learn how to transform your relationships so you can stay juicy. To learn more about me or to listen to past shows, visit my website at unadrake.com.